And you can place both hands on your belly, or maybe one hand on your belly, one hand on your heart. And just try to consciously lengthen each of your inhales and each of your exhales. Drawing awareness to our breath is one of the most peaceful tools we have to deal with the outside world. Just drawing our attention to our quality of breath and making the choice to take big, deep inhales and deep exhales when our emotions start to rise. And I want you to just take a moment to draw an attention to your mind. Maybe it's to be more present, maybe it's to be more grounded, maybe it's to just make it through this class one asana at a time. Whatever your intention is, draw it to your mind. And make the conscious choice to follow through with your intention. And then draw your attention back to your breath. Feel the ground beneath your body. Feel the breath moving in and out. On your next inhale, stretch your arms overhead. Stretch out long through your toes. And just take a moment to waken up the body. Give it a nice morning stretch. And then slowly walk your feet over to the right side of the mat. Maybe cross one foot over the other. And then bring your arms over to the right side of the mat. Breathe into the stretch in your left side body. Take a few slow, deep breaths here. You also have the option to cross one hand over the other if you'd like. Focusing in on your deep inhales and exhales. And slowly walk yourself back to center. Stretch out through your fingers and your toes. And then slowly start to walk your feet over to the left side of your mat. Maybe cross one foot over the other. And then go ahead and bring your arms over to the left side of the mat. Breathe into the stretch in your right side body. Maybe cross one hand over the other. Take a few slow, deep breaths here. And slowly come back to center. Draw your right knee in towards your chest. Hug it in. Place your hands on the outside of your shin. Keeping your right hand on your knee, you can bring your left hand down towards your hip. Slowly start to draw your right knee over to the right side of the mat, opening your right hip. Try to keep your left hip grounded on the mat. Take a few slow, deep breaths here. And then slowly draw your knee back to center. Straighten your right leg. Clasp your hands behind your hamstring or your calf. Slowly start to hug your right leg towards your body, stretching out through your right hamstring. Make sure your hips are rooted down on the mat. You always have the option to bend your left knee and place your left foot on the mat. Stay here for 2 more cycles of breath. Release your hands back down to the mat. Bend your right knee. Go ahead and place your hands on the outside of your right shin. Hug it in. Keep your left hand on your shin. Bring your right arm out to a T and slowly drop your right knee over towards the left side of the mat. Gaze over your right shoulder, come into a supine twist. On each exhale, twist a little deeper. Stay here for a few slow, deep breaths. And slowly bring your right knee back to center. Give it one more hug in. And then stretch your right leg out long. Pause here. And just take notice of any differences you might feel between your right leg and your left. And then slowly bring your left knee in towards your chest. Give it a nice hug in. Keep your left hand on your knee. You can bring your right hand down to your hip or just down to the mat. Slowly start to open your left hip to the left side. Keep your right hip rooted down in the mat. Take a few slow, deep breaths here. And then bring your left knee back to center. Go ahead and clasp your hands behind your hamstring or your calf and stretch your left foot up towards the sky. Stretching out through your left hamstring. You have the option to bend your right knee, place your right knee on the mat, or your right foot on the mat. Hug that left knee in towards your body. We're here for 3 more slow, deep breaths. And bend your left knee into your chest, hug it in. If you bent your right knee, stretch it out long. Place your right hand on your left knee, stretch your left arm out to the side, and slowly drop your left knee over towards the right side of the mat. Gaze over your left shoulder. Come into supine twist. On each exhale, try to relax into the twist. We're here for 3 more slow, deep breaths. And bring your left knee back to center. Give it one more hug in. And stretch your left leg out long. Just take notice of how your legs feel now. Are they both more even? Or does one side feel different than the other? And then slowly hug both knees in towards your chest. Maybe rock side to side if that feels good. And cross your shins, come up into an easy seated position. And roll over into a tabletop. Bring your wrists in line with your shoulders, knees in line with your hips. And slowly bring your knees out wide, big toes together, sink your hips back, arms stretch out in front of you, forehead lowers to the mat, come into child's pose. Feel your hips sink down towards your heels. And take a few breaths here. Stretch your right arm up to the sky, thread it under your body, slowly lower down, stretch out through your right shoulder, gaze over your right fingers, feel the weight sinking back into your hips. Take a few breaths here. And go ahead and stretch your right arm out in front of you. Bring it back to a child's pose. Stretch your left arm up towards the sky. Thread it under your body. Bring it over to the right side. Gaze over your left fingers. Sink your weight into your hips. Feel the stretch in your left shoulder. for 2 more deep breaths. And then stretch your left arm out to meet your right. Sink back to child's pose. Bring your hands to prayer in front of you. Slowly lower your thumbs towards your neck. Option to stay here or walk your elbows forward towards the top of your mat. Stretch out through your biceps and triceps. Breathe in. We're here for 2 more slow, deep breaths. Release your hands down to the mat. Slowly start to rise up to tabletop. Check your alignment here. Make sure your wrists are in line with your shoulders, knees in line with your hips. Bring your forearms down to the mat, palms facing down. Tuck your toes. Slowly start to lift your knees off the mat. Bring your hips up and back, come into dolphin. Take a few slow breaths here. Ground down through your palms, your elbows, and then lower your knees down to the mat. Come back into tabletop. Stretch your right leg behind you. Just take a moment to make sure you're aligned properly here. And then slowly start to walk your right heel over towards the left side of your mat. Gaze over your left heel, or your right heel. Breathe in, soften into the stretch here. And then walk your foot back to center. Bring your knee back down to meet your left. Extend your left leg out behind you. Pause here, just make sure you have the weight evenly distributed through your hands. And then slowly start to walk your left foot over towards the right side of your mat. Gaze over your left heel. Take a few slow, deep breaths here. And then walk your foot back to center. Bring your knee back down to meet your right. Pause here. And then slowly start to circle your hips in one direction. Move with the rhythm of your breath. Maybe it's slow, maybe it's fast. You find what works for you. And then pause in the middle and start to rotate in the opposite direction. And pause in the center. Place your right foot between your hands. Tuck your left toes. Lift your left knee off the mat. You can slowly walk your toes back towards the back of the mat and then drop your left knee back down. Untuck your toes. Slowly start to rise up to crescent lunge. Extend your arms overhead. Gaze can be straight in front of you or overhead towards your hands. Stretch out through that left hip flexor. Stay nice and tall. arms to cactus arms. Bend your elbows, fingers out wide. And then stretch your arms back overhead. Pause here. Bring your arms back to cactus arms. And then come back up, bringing them overhead. And bring your hands back down to your hips. Interlace your fingers behind you. Stretch your arms out behind you, opening through your chest. Gaze up towards the ceiling. Try to stay grounded through your right foot. Take one more deep breath here, squeezing your shoulder blades together. And release your hands, bring your hands back down to your hips. And then place your hands on the mat to frame your front foot. Keep your left hand on the mat. Bring your right hand to your hip or stretch it overhead. You have the option to stay here, or you can tuck your left toes and lift your left knee off the mat. Come into easy twist. We're here for 3 more slow, deep breaths. And bring your right hand back down to the mat. You can lower your left knee and come back to tabletop. Place your left foot between your hands. Tuck your right toes, lift your right knee off the mat. Go ahead and wiggle your right foot back towards the back of your mat. Lower your knee down, untuck your toes. Slowly rise up to crescent lunge. Extend your arms overhead, shoulders away from the ears. You should feel a stretch in your right hip flexor. Try to stay nice and tall through the spine. And bring your arms to cactus arms. Squeeze your shoulder blades together. Gaze up towards the ceiling or straight out in front of you. And then stretch your arms overhead. And then bring your arms back to cactus arms, squeezing your shoulder blades together. And then extend your arms overhead. Pause here. Grounding down through your left foot. Bring your hands down to your hips. And then slowly bring your hands down to frame your front foot. Keep your right hand down on the mat. Bring your left hand to your hip or extend it overhead. Option to stay here or tuck your right toes and lift your right knee off the mat. Come into easy twist. Stay here for a few slow, deep breaths. And then lower your left hand down to the mat. Lower your right knee. Step your left knee back to a tabletop. Pause here. Step your right foot to the outside edge of your right hand. Tuck your left toes. Lift your left knee off the mat. Come in to wide lunge. Pause here. And then slowly step your left foot to the outside edge of your left hand and sink your hips down. Come into Malasana squat. Elbows pushing into the knees, knees pushing into the elbows, hands at heart center. Take a few release your hands to the mat. Slowly start to straighten your legs, heel toe your feet together, come into forward fold. Let everything hang here. And then bring your hands to your shins, spine long, halfway lift. And exhale, fold forward. Inhale, circle sweep arms to sky. Exhale, bring your hands to heart center. Bring your big toes together. Leave a little space in your heels. Slowly sink your hips down, come into chair pose. Hands can be at heart center, straight out in front of you, or in line with your ears overhead. Stay here for 2 more cycles of breath. And then release your hands to the mat, straighten your legs, come into forward fold. Inhale, hands to shins, spine long, halfway lift. Exhale, fold forward. Plant your palms down on the mat, step back, come into down dog. If this is your first down dog of the day, you can go ahead and play here. Maybe come up onto your tippy toes and try to sink your heels down. You can pedal your feet. Take a moment here to settle in. And then slowly lower your knees down to the mat, come into tabletop. Step your left foot to the outside edge of your left hand. Tuck your right toes. Bring your right knee off the mat, come into wide lunge. Pause here. Evenly distribute the weight between your palms. And then step your right foot to the outside edge of your right hand. Sink your hips low, bring your hands to heart center. Elbows push into the knees, knees push into the elbows, come into Malasana squat. Pause here. Take a few slow, deep breaths. And then place your hands on the mat. Slowly start to straighten your legs, heel toe your feet together, and forward fold. Inhale, hands to shins, spine long, halfway lift. Exhale, fold forward. Inhale, circle sweep arms to sky. Exhale, bring your hands to heart center. Bring your big toes together, little space between your heels. Slowly sink your hips back, come into chair pose. Option to keep your hands here at heart center, straight out in front of you, or in line with your ears. Make sure your weight is in your heels, your hips are sinking low to the mat. We're here for 2 more deep breaths. Tighten through your core. And then lower your hands down to the mat, forward fold. Inhale, hands to shins, spine long, halfway lift. Exhale, fold forward. Inhale, circle sweep arms to sky. Exhale, bring your hands to heart center. Close your eyes here. Take a moment to draw your intention that you set for your practice and check in with how you're feeling. Tune into your breath. Inhale, reach your arms overhead. Exhale, swan dive forward. Inhale, hands to shins, spine long. Exhale, fold forward. Plant your hands down on the mat and step back to down dog. Take a pause here. And then inhale your right leg high in the air. Bring your right heel towards your buttocks, open your hip, fan out your hip on the right side. Check in, make sure your weight is evenly distributed between your hands and your left foot. Stay nice and tall, opening through that right hip. And then stretch your right leg out long, coming back to three-legged dog. Bring your right knee across your body, bring it to your left elbow. Pause here, and then stretch it back, come into three-legged dog. Bring your right knee to your nose, hug it in, and then stretch it back to three-legged dog. Bring your right knee to your right elbow, and then push it back to three-legged dog. And thread your right knee through to low lunge. Ground down through the soles of your feet and slowly rise up to high lunge. Stretch your arms overhead, shoulders away from the ears. Settle in here. Grow nice and tall through the crown. Hug in through the midline. Anchor your left heel down. Spin your arms open to a T. Sink into the right knee. Come in to warrior two. Gaze over your right hand. Flip your front palm. Slowly lift that right arm overhead. Let your left hand stretch down your left leg. Come into reverse warrior. Pause here. Feel the stretch in your right side body. And then slowly rise back up to warrior two. Windmill your hands back down to frame your front foot. Spin off your back heel. Root down through the palms of your hands and step back to plank. Tighten through your core, flex your thighs, and then slowly lower all the way down to the mat. Untuck your toes, hands are under your shoulders, squeezing down through the tops of your feet and your quads. Slowly start to peel your heart off the mat, come into cobra. And then slowly lower your chest back down to the mat. Tuck your toes, push back to down dog. Take a moment to pause here. And then stretch your left leg high in the air. Bring your left heel towards your buttocks, open through your left hip. Remember to notice how your weight is distributed between your hands and your right foot. Take one more deep breath here. And then stretch your left leg back to three-legged dog. Pause here. And bring your left knee to your right elbow. And then push back to three-legged dog. Bring your left knee to your nose. And push back to three-legged dog. Bring your left knee to your left elbow. Push back to three-legged dog. Thread your left foot through, come into low lunge. Ground down through the soles of your feet. Slowly rise up to high lunge. Extend your arms overhead, shoulders away from the ears. Hug into the midline. Grow nice and tall through the crown. Slowly anchor your left heel down. Bring your arms open to a T. Sink into your left knee, come into warrior two. Pause here. Find your breath. Flip your left palm. Slowly stretch your left arm overhead. Gaze over your left fingers. Right arm comes down your right leg. Come into reverse warrior. Stretch open through the left side body. And slowly come back up to warrior two. Windmill your hands back down to frame your front foot. Spin off your back heel. Step back to plank. You can take a chaturanga here. Come into cobra or up dog. If you're following with me, we're going to slowly lower all the way down to the mat. Untuck our toes. Slowly peel our heart off the mat. Come into cobra, squeezing our shoulder blades together, opening through our chest. And slowly lower back down to the mat. Tuck your toes. Lift your hips up and back. Come into down dog. Take a moment to find your breath here. And then slowly walk your feet up towards your hands. Come into forward fold. Inhale, hands to shins, spine long, halfway lift. Exhale, fold forward. Inhale, circle sweep arms to sky. Exhale, bring your hands to heart center. Inhale, bring your right knee in towards your chest. Root down through your left foot. Hug your hips in. And slowly bring your right ankle over your left knee. Sink your hips down. Come in to standing figure four. Take a few slow, deep breaths here. Find your focal point. Start to straighten your left leg. Bring your right knee back in towards your chest. And start to hinge at your hips. Kick your right foot back. Come into warrior three. Hands can stay at heart center or extend out in front of us. Or come into airplane legs. Flex out through that right foot, toes pointing down towards the mat. Keep your hips square. Try to lift that right leg a little higher. We're here for 2 more deep breaths. And slowly lower your hands down to the mat. Kick that right foot high in the air. Come into standing split. Stay here for 3 more deep breaths. And slowly lower that right foot down to meet your left. Forward fold. Inhale, hands to shins, spine long, halfway lift. Exhale, fold forward. Inhale, circle sweep arms to sky. Exhale, bring your hands to heart center. Ground down through your right foot. Lift your right knee up towards your chest. Hug in through your hips in the midline. Cross your left ankle over your right knee. Sink your hips down, come in to standing figure four. Find your drishti or your focal point. Focus in on your balance and stability, tightening through your core. We're here for 2 more deep breaths. Start to straighten that right knee. Bring your your left knee in towards your chest. Grounding down through that right foot. Slowly start to hinge forward. Kick your left foot back towards the back of your mat. Flex the foot. Try to lift it up, but square your hips. Come into warrior three. Hands can stay here at heart center or come out in front of you. Stay here for 2 more deep breaths. And slowly lower your hands down to the mat. Kick that left foot high in the air, toes pointing down towards the mat. Coming into standing split. We're here for 3 more deep breaths. And slowly lower your left foot back down to meet your right and fold forward. Inhale, hands to shins, spine long, halfway lift. Exhale, plant your palms down, step back to down dog. Inhale, your right leg high in the air. Exhale, bring your right knee to your left wrist. Slowly come in to pigeon. You can walk your right ankle over towards your left wrist, or you can keep your toes tucked under. You can also wiggle that back foot back. Sit up nice and tall, and slowly lower your chest down to the mat. Fold forward. Your head can be resting on the mat or on your hands. Breathe in to the sensation in your right hip. Try to relax in. We're here for 5 more deep breaths. Slowly start to rise up. Place your palms down on the mat. Tuck your left toes and step back to down dog. You can go ahead and wiggle your hips out if that feels good. And then slowly start to stretch your left leg high in the air. Bring your left knee to your left wrist. Set up for pigeon. Wiggle your right foot back. If you'd like to go a little further, you can bring your left ankle towards your right wrist. Sit up nice and tall, and with a flat back, slowly lower your heart down to the mat. Rest your head on your hands or on the mat. Soften in. Check in with that back leg. Make sure it's straight, pointing towards the back of the mat. We're here for 5 more slow, deep breaths. Soften in. Start to rise up. Place your palms down on the mat. Tuck your right toes under. Step back to down dog. Take 1 more deep inhale here. And an exhale. And then lower your knees down to the mat. Come over to a seated position. knees are bent and pointing towards the sky. Soles of your feet are on the mat. Grounding down, making sure your sitting bones are grounded. Start to sink your shoulders back, staying nice and tall, tightening through the core. And slowly start to bring your shins parallel to the mat. Hands are out in front of you. Come into boat pose. You have the option to also reach behind your hamstrings if that feels good. We're here for 5 more deep breaths. It's okay if you start to shake, just try to stay with it. And lower your feet down to the mat. Bring your hands behind you, fingers pointing towards your toes. Ground down through your feet, bringing your ankles under your knees. Lift your hips off the mat, come into reverse tabletop. Maybe sink your head back. Hips are lifting towards the sky. Take a few slow, deep breaths here. And then lower your hips down to the mat. Come over to a seated position. Stretch your legs out wide. Inhale, reach your arms overhead. Pause here, make sure your shoulders are away from your ears. Tilt your torso towards your right toes. And slowly lower down, fold over your leg. Your hands can be placed on your right sole of your foot, your shin, or the mat. On each exhale, try to release in a little deeper. We're here for 2 more cycles of breath. And then rise back up to center. Inhale, reach your arms overhead. Pause here, shoulders away from the ears. Slowly lower your chest and your hands down towards the mat. Fold forward. Take a few slow, deep breaths here. And start to walk your hands in towards your body, rise up. Inhale, reach your arms overhead, shoulders away from the ears. And slowly start to tilt your torso over towards your left toes. And then go ahead and fold forward. Hands come to the left sole of your foot, your shin, or the mat. With each cycle of breath, try to make a little more space and relax into the stretch. We're here for 3 more cycles of breath. Slowly start to rise back up to center. Bring your legs together, come into staff pose, grounding down through your sits bones. Inhale, reach your arms overhead. Exhale, fold forward. Place your hands on your shins or your soles of your feet. Bow in towards your knees. Take Take a few slow, deep breaths here. And try to find a little more space to soften in. And slowly rise all the way up. Bend your knees, place the soles of your feet on the mat, and slowly lower your back all the way down to the mat. Come into a supine position. You can place your hands down by your hips, ankles in line with your knees. Slowly start to lift your hips up towards the ceiling. Come into bridge pose. Option to stay here or interlace your fingers. Walk your shoulder blades together, opening through your chest. Tighten your glutes. We're here for 5 more deep breaths. And release your hands. Slowly walk your shoulder blades out and lower your hips back down to the mat. Take a moment to pause here. As we prepare for one more bridge, you can take whatever variation serves you, whether it's restorative bridge by placing a block under your sacrum or coming into wheel if that is in your practice. Go ahead and set up for whatever you would like to do here. If you're following along with me, we're going to ground down through the soles of our feet. Slowly lift our hips up towards the ceiling, tighten through our glutes. Interlace our fingers behind us, walk our shoulder blades together, open through the heart. We're here for 5 cycles of breath, keeping our glutes tight, hips pointing towards the ceiling. Release your hands, walk your shoulders out, and slowly lower your hips back down to the mat. Go ahead and windshield wiper your knees from side to side if that feels good for you. And come back to stillness in the middle. Hug both knees in towards your chest. Stretch your feet up towards the sky. You have the option to stay here and legs up the wall, or you can come into plow pose. If you're coming into plow pose, you're going to start to lift your feet up and back towards the mat behind you. You can bring your shoulder blades in, walk your elbows in. You can place your hands on your sacrum for added support. Breathe in, feel the stretch in your upper back. We're here for 5 slow, deep breaths. If you're in plow, slowly bring your knees in towards your body. Lower your back down to the mat, hips down to the mat. Bring your feet down to the mat. Hug both knees in towards your chest. Rock side to side if that feels good. Stretch your left leg out long, keeping your right knee in towards your chest. Place your left hand on the outside of your right knee. Stretch your right arm out long. Lower your right knee down towards the left side of your mat. Twist open. Gaze over your right fingers. Stay here for 2 slow, deep breaths. And bring your knee back to center. Hug both knees in towards your chest. Stretch your right leg out long. Keep your right hand on your left knee. Left arm comes out to a T. Lower your left knee over to the right side. Twist open. Gaze over your left fingers. Stay here for 2 slow, deep breaths. And come back to center. Hug both knees in towards your chest. Maybe rock side to side if that feels good. Maybe grab the outside edges of your feet and come into happy baby. At this time, I invite you to do any asana you need to complete your practice today. And if you're ready, prepare to come into Shavasana. You can hug your knees into your chest and come into whatever position feels good for you for relaxation. You can stretch your feet out to the sides of your mat, flip your palms up towards the sky, and take a moment to settle in. Feel the weight of your body against the mat. Focusing in on your intention that you set for this practice. Take a moment to think about how you'll be able to take that intention off the mat with you today. And go ahead and let your intention go. Settle in, melt into the mat, relaxing through your head and your neck, softening in between the space between your eyes, your jaw, softening your shoulders and your arms, releasing through your hands and your fingers, relaxing your hips and your glutes, relaxing through your hamstrings and your knees, releasing through your calves and your ankles, feeling the weight of your feet pressing into the mat and letting go. body. Maybe hug your knees into your chest. When you're ready, make your way over onto your right side. Pause here. Take a deep breath and a deep exhale before making your way up to a seated position. Sit up nice and tall, close your eyes, and bring your hands to heart center. Practicing yoga is a lot more than the asanas. Practicing yoga teaches us how to connect with our breath at any moment, in any situation. I want to take a moment to let each one of you honor yourselves for showing up and practicing and making space for self-care. Thank you so much for practicing with me today. The light in me sees and honors the light in each one of you. Namaste.